Shall we review the voodoo? I actually like that.
Man.
But okay, Brandon, I'm sorry, but the second you said the voodoo, my mind went to this old Dreamcast beat 'em up game where one of the characters was a ghost named Voodoo.
Cool.
Power Stone?
No, it wasn't Power Stone. It was something. I never won Power Stone. It was a different one.
Well,
yeah, sorry. Tiny video game rant. So yeah.
We are now going to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. So full spoilers for Ant-Man and the Wasp, the third Ant-Man film, the however many MCU film I lost count. The divisive Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, if you listen to the online chat. But we're not here to talk about the online reaction to the film. We're talking about our reaction to the film. So what do we think about Ant-Man? Once again, spoilers. Ben.
I liked it.
Okay, Ryan.
And we'll get into it later.
What do you think, Marty?
I mean, it was a lot of fun. And
That's not the script. He was gonna say a thing.
No. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and there's a lot I don't like about it.
Ryan.
Yeah, I liked it. I wish I can love it, but I'm certainly not as negative as a lot of other people. I always try to come at the things glass half full, and there's a lot to love about this movie, but as we all are, big Ant-Man fan, it just doesn't have as much heart as it needed, and that's my biggest problem with it, to be honest.
Sparkz.
I had a really good time, and I usually don't agree with the statements where people say, like, this thing's just here to set up X.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I feel like a decent chunk of this movie's plot is just there to set up X, rather than tell its own story.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into it.
Then let's get into it real quickly.
Wait, what did you think?
I was about to say.
Oh, great.
I loved it. So let's get into it, Sparkz, because you started.
You loved it? You loved it.
I did.
Okay.
That's awesome.
That's great.
That's God. I'm so happy at least one of us.
I can't gauge where you're gonna land off your Letterboxd ratings anymore, because I'm like, I gave it an 8. You gave it an 8. I was like, I loved it. We're coming out swinging with loved it. I thought, like, had a good time. Like, what? All right. Anyway,
I mean, it's both. I had a good time and I loved it.
I loved things in it.
Yeah.
Go. What thing?
I'll tell you what. Everything before we get to the quantum realm, I'm like, hell yeah, baby. Ant-Man's back. The first 20 minutes, Cassie's going to jail just like her old man. Oh, Cassie, come on. You're not there, Dad. She's hanging out with the Gramps and the grandma. Like, they're having fun. I love that. I love the interactions. We get to the quantum realm. I'm like, cool. This kind of feels like Star Wars. A little dark. Can't really see some stuff. That's fine. I'll probably get used to it. Never gets any better. Spoiler alert. I love Kang. I love Scott. I kinda, and this makes me sad, didn't love Catherine Newton. And I thought she was totally fine. She yells dad a lot, and it kind of sounds bad half the time. Is Hope even in this movie? Is the Wasp in this movie at all? This should have been called Ant-Man and Stature Quantumania, if I'm being honest, because Hope's not in this movie. Boy, Michael Douglas, that dude just took an edible and he's like, I'm just happy to be here. He's awesome in this movie because he's just chilling out, hanging out with ants, being goofy. But yeah, overall, I'm like, yeah.
No words for your queen, Michelle Pfeiffer.
She's great. I wanted more her and Kang together, but that's because I just think they have good chemistry together. Sure. Thank you for. There's a lot of characters in this movie.
There are.
Don't forget about Neb and Natara and Zefoy and Glip Glop.
Glip Glop.
Is that the blob guy that wants holes?
I do.
That's
like,
Neb.
Yeah. Oh, is that Nev? Oh my gosh.
Voiced by David Dastmalchian.
The Baba Yaga man.
As Mag pointed out. Because he's the Baba Yaga guy from Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'll go.
Jelly hole.
I kind of am more positive than Ryan, but not too different. I think Catherine Newton's pretty good as Cassie. I think the problem is that this movie's not really about her relationship with Scott. And like, I wish it was. It feels like it wanted to be. But
I thought it was
constantly giving up time to be about other things. And this movie is half a movie about Kang, and then half a movie about all the other Ant-Man stuff. And I wish it was a movie that was mostly about Ant-Man stuff, and then a little bit about Kang. And that's general overall thing. I have to agree with Ryan about the Hope thing. The longer I sat on it, the more I was like, Hope went with the wrong party. Hope should have been with Scott and Cassie, because I think that there's a lot more relationship dynamic to mine there. We haven't seen them functionally like be deep in their relationship together. We haven't seen her as like the person who gave Cassie a suit behind Scott's back and can like kind of play the third person, refereeing them working on their relationship, still having the 5-year blip amongst them, and how they're finding their way with each other and where those gaps are and that kind of thing. And like, there's a lot more I think that could have been done there for Hope. And Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer could have just run with all the same stuff and done more, just the two of them. Like, Hope didn't add anything by being with them.
And like, oh, go ahead, man.
No, one of my biggest complaints, or one of the things that I just like, it didn't take me out of the movie, but one thing is why I was like, just really like, that didn't feel earned, was Hope and Scott saying "I love you" at the end of the movie. Now, the reason why it didn't feel earned is because, I mean, I get that they've been through a whole bunch of crap together. They were on the Avengers, and they are this new unit. Like, Cassie obviously sees Hope as a kind of stepmom, parental figure, because she has her mom and stepdad, and now she has her dad and Hope.
Sorry,
like she calls, okay, and she calls Hank grandpa, for God's sakes. But
that's cute.
I definitely agree with Sparkz at the end that Hope should have been with Scott, so then they could see, hey, this is what's going on. Like, there was maybe not a maybe like some sort of plot thread, like some little problem that these two need to go through together, so they could reach that part of their relationship. I don't know. It just felt like
I'll push back a little bit, because like, I don't think that "I love you" needed to be earned. They've been together for at least a year and a half post Endgame.
They kissed at the end of their first movie.
It'd be weird if this was the first time they said "I love you." So I don't think that moment needed to be earned, but I do think there was more interesting relationship stuff to see if they were together.
It didn't even need to be a moment. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, sure, they love each other. We know that. We've seen it. They're responding and stuff like that. But it was like this pause-esque moment that the audience didn't need to see, because, or even in their storyline, that's not what they were struggling on. That's not what they were going through.
They were totally happy, it looked like,
So like that "I love you" is like, of course they do. Like, why do we?
They did like focus on it, like, for a weird reason.
I think partially because like they just haven't said it in front of us.
Sure.
And like, that's fine.
But I know they love each other.
Right. Yeah. I agree. I think the clear visualization that that's true is when all the Scotts, which I actually really love this moment, all the Scotts and all the Hopes,
that's my favorite,
come together and grab onto each other, and all their probabilities collapse into one. And I'm like,
talk about like
that tells me they love each other. I get it there. Like, you don't need to tell me.
Just get rid of that one guy that's in pink.
Oh, the basketball guy. We can talk about the probability scene. I was worried that scene was just going to be like nonsense for nonsense sake, but like, seeing it being a probability field, and seeing them become ants, and like how grim it seems, like that's a really cool scene. And especially when Wasp finally shows up, I'm like, oh, you are in this movie, thank God. And like, at the probability stuff's happened, I'm like, man, this was a great visual. This is some cool ass shit.
Yeah,
I loved it. That was great.
Yeah, the probability scene was, I also loved it. I just love how like the constant duplication of the constant probabilities. I thought that was really good. Like, whenever someone gets big and they just like turn into string cheese, I was like, oh no, that's so sad. But yeah, I think I feel more how Marty feels about like how we didn't really need to see that thing at the end, because obviously we know that they have feelings for each other. But that was one of the things about the movie that I was just, it was more of a me thing. I was like, yeah, I don't really like that moment. I mean, other moments in the movie that I really did enjoy, like Grayson earlier in the chat talked about Darren, don't be a dick.
We'll get to MODOK.
We'll get to MODOK. But really, I actually liked Cassie. I liked her quite a bit. She, oddly enough, when I was watching her, it reminded me. This is probably because we most recently read the book. I saw the Cassie in the comic book that we just read, Hot World Hive.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that was the type of Cassie I saw on screen, and I was for it. I was like, yeah, this feels like Cassie grown up 5 years. She's going to be Stinger, or she's Stature now. And I guess where I was missing more of Cassie interacting with Scott and Hope and not just Scott.
Sure.
Well, I think like, and they're just amongst the three of them, I think there was a way to create like a character Ant-Man family arc that's just not really here.
Yeah.
It's not happening. And that's the main thing that I'm just like, I don't know why this isn't here, because it's somewhere in there where I'm like, we're just not getting the character movement of Ant-Man that I'm used to from the other two Ant-Man films.
And it doesn't, and again, it didn't need to feel exactly like Ant-Man 1 and 2, because they're trying to do a big sci-fi movie.
Sure.
But I just watching this, it didn't have the same like sincerity or heart as those other movies did. And again, it's like, it's not trying to be that, but like, that's why I like the Ant-Man movies. And like, there's not enough like great family stuff. There's some really cool sci-fi stuff for sure, but like, I mean, like, I guess Ant-Man being like Kang being Ant-Man's like big villain is really interesting, and having like, and that is maybe what I'm rubbing up against. And like, man, did Ant-Man need to fight Kang? Like, it's because like, I don't have this problem, but people are like, okay, so Kang got his ass beat by Ant-Man. Why should we be afraid of him of the Avengers? I'm like, well, did you see there's 1,000 other of them? Like, give them some credit. There's a lot of them.
Just because you brought up that note, like I do think, to me, trying to think about like the film, the major general MCU audience, to me, you don't have to sell me on Kang. I know what Kang's about.
Sure.
But I think they do a lot of talking about how badass Kang is and like what
Kang's telling us
and all this. And I'm like, not that I wanted a cameo show, but when Janet sees the flashes of his life, how come we didn't see like some costumed Avengers bodies, even if we're not seeing the actors?
A broken shield.
Yeah, just like something kind of Age of Ultron-ish with Tony's like flash forward. Even in glimpses, just to give us like, oh, he's like killed people we care about, just to like really visually show to a film audience. Instead, we just see him like blasting. I don't know. That's part of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
That kind of felt a little hollow for me, like for like trying to impress upon an audience what Kang is.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, but man, that was such a good scene though, when she like touches it and he's like, I'm just trying to help you. Like,
yeah.
I just want to get you home.
Yeah. And I believe that Kang does like really like her, and like they do have a bond. They do have really good chemistry together. And he is like, yeah, I am going to go be a bad guy, but I will get you home. Like that's still a deal between us homies. But you know, Janet has.
And when she asks him how many worlds will die, he goes, "Not yours."
Yeah, isn't that just a nice? What a nice guy Kang is.
I'm going to commit genocide on countless planets, but yours is going to be safe. I will make sure I won't touch yours. Yours is fine.
Something I do like about the way they write Kang in this a lot is this sense of he's constantly throwing out, I want you to remember that this is your fault. Yeah. I want you to remember that this isn't on me. This is on you. You made a choice, and this is what happens because of the choice. Rather than taking any like, you know, it's all like, oh, you're making me
yes,
do this.
As you're getting punched in the face. Why are you making me punch you? Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Jonathan Majors rules. Like, I wasn't worried. Like, he is probably like the coolest, like the best part of the movie, even if him being in the movie is an interesting place. And Brandon, why don't you share some thoughts? We shared plenty of positive thoughts. Why don't you share a couple?
To answer Grayson's comment, I've been, for whatever reason, since we started the review, I've been having this really terrible cough. I don't know what's going on, but I'll try to get through some things, because I have a lot of thoughts about what you guys are saying.
I want to hear them.
One of the you guys talked about Kang destroying those timelines. I agree, Sparkz. I think that's a really good point, that it would be better to have seen someone that were not even like Chris Evans, but like the Captain America shield, as Ryan said, or like the Iron Man helmet, or something to acknowledge that because he says in the movie, "Have I killed you yet? Are you the one with the hammer?" He knows these Avengers. He knows who they are, but we get a flashback that could be the point of showing that moment, but we don't see it. We're just told it.
Right. How easy would it have been to see like Iron Man and Hulk both getting wiped out by one of his blasts or something? Yeah. Like they're all just visually recreated. Like it wouldn't have taken much.
Just do the Spider-Man No Way Home and just reuse footage from another movie. Like you don't even have to do new footage. Just like show an image of the Hulk getting beat from an Endgame or something.
Yeah. And the other thing is I wanted to mention I really like Jonathan Majors. I think that's unanimous. Everybody does.
Yeah.
He has an interesting motivation in this movie that I think is like the opposite of He Who Remains. So I kind of find it interesting that we've seen two Kangs at this point, He Who Remains and Kang, and they both have the same end goal, but for a different reason.
Yes.
This Kang wants to destroy all the timelines to rule them all. The He Who Remains wanted to destroy all the other timelines so that there's no evil Kangs.
Right.
He was
I thought that was
technically
cool.
like the best of them. He's like, I know how bad I am, and like technically what I'm doing is like killing trillions of other universes, but I promise you it's better than what is out there. I promise you I'm awful. I am awful, I promise. And yeah, he is. All of them are.
Yeah, so I like Jonathan Majors. Like I really like how committed he is to the role. And we'll talk about the post credits. That just floored me because
for sure,
great stuff. But I think that you guys talked about Cassie. I wholeheartedly disagree with the two of you, Ryan and Sparkz. I'm sorry. I really liked Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang. I thought she was delightful.
I'm the only one who.
I said I liked Catherine Newton as Cassie.
He disagreed with me.
All I said was that I just thought that she needed more of an arc in the movie.
Yeah,
sure. I don't even know if I agree with that though. I really thought she was delightful, and I really can't wait to see her again. She has such good chemistry with Paul Rudd, but something that you'd said rung true for me more than anything, which was hope. And I apologize for just going backwards through your points.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You were coughing a lot. It's okay.
Yeah.
As hope. Hope is there. She is there. There's a lot of talk about her appearance, or her arc, or her character development in Ant-Man and the Wasp, a movie that I greatly enjoy. I don't know if I agree with a lot of what is said about Hope in Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I found at least Evangeline Lilly was more committed than she was in this movie, and perhaps she was just kind of bored with the script. She knew that she wasn't being given a lot, and it shows. And so she's honestly, I think the only weak point for me is Hope. At least any major one that would negate my feelings towards this movie. But yeah, I've been sitting with this for a couple of days, and I'm like, I think I love this.
I just can't believe that it's called Ant-Man and the Wasp, and the Wasp is barely in the movie. Like, I really think this should have been called Ant-Man and Stature. Like, do the naming conventions, because this movie's more about him and his daughter, even though it should have been more about that.
It just feels so glaring to me that, like, much to the point that you're saying, Brandon, which is just like, I think she is the weakest thing of the movie by the virtue of like them just not doing anything with her. Like, she just, Hank and Janet's like side story, like not even side story, but their alternate story. You got your two stories. Like, it's good. In fact, maybe even better without Hope there. Like, it's already great. They're killing it. I loved watching Hank and Janet. I loved watching them so much. And I'm like, Hope, unfortunately, is just not adding anything. The only thing she's adding is this like upsetness that her mom is not sharing anything with her, and they just hit that beat with her over and over and over again. And I'm like, Hope would have had so much more to add by being the intermediary between the rift happening between Scott and Cassie. And I think they just could have made that a little more accentuated, and even made like a small amount. I didn't want a whole lot of drama around it, but a small amount of Scott being like, you gave her a suit behind my back kind of thing. Right. And like, you know, all these different levels of like, Scott, you've been doing just like what we're introducing in the movie. Like in the beginning, you've been doing the book tour. You've been focused on these other things. You're not paying attention. And all of that just be the dynamic. The idea of like, just, she serves so much better of a purpose, even if she's not doing a lot more in the story necessarily, by being in the same position as Cassie, threatened by Kang, and then coming in and helping Scott the same way. Again, like, one of my favorite visuals in the film is her and Scott reaching for each other and the probabilities collapsing. Would work even more if she was part of the scenes with Scott before that.
Yep.
I think real quickly, Ryan, about the probability thing. I also really like that scene. I thought that was a really cool visual. And I think that scene is the only reason why they're split, because it's important that they come together at that moment. And you know, that's fine. Still wish there was. If there was more done with her, but I wanted to highlight a moment in that probability scene, which I really liked, which is when they hear Cassie. All the Scots hear Cassie on the intercom, and they all uniformly like, "Oh, this is Cassie. Get him up there. Let's go. Come on." They're all working together to help Cassie.
Right, which is why it would have been really good, because you have Cassie up there and that motivation thing that brings them all together and unites them. And again, like, you could have just had Wasp up there as well, and she comes down to help Scott. And like, she could have just jumped into the probability field from there rather than coming from like the Hank and Janet side of the story. Mm-hmm. And you get both of those things right there. Who are the most important people to Scott? Cassie and Hope. That's it. Like, it's all right there.
And all the stuff with Hank and Janet was so fun, and them talking about like, oh, you know, you were gone for 30 years, like we both had lovers, and they don't make a big deal out of it, but Hope is just there to like be a downer. Yeah. Be like, why did you hide this from me, Mom? Like, just, I can't believe like they do that like 3 times in a row, and I'm like, I get it. Let the parents have fun.
Just real fast, I want to say, like, I found it so refreshing how briskly they moved through like Hank and Janet talking about relationships in the time they were separated.
She's banging Bill Murray. He's like, yeah, I get it.
I'm glad it was not that big of a deal. It wasn't some big derailment. They didn't turn it into Hank having like a dumb, jealous fit rage that like for half the movie.
Hank in this movie, like his like rough edges are completely sanded. He is a totally fun, chill dude who like is like, oh yeah, these ants from 1,000 years in the future came to help us. I love it. I love ants.
You read my book. Every goddamn word.
That's so good. He is like the secret MVP. Like, because Michael Douglas finally gets to have like just be fun. Like more of the Ant-Man 2 version, just more of that. I love it.
I loved Michael Douglas throughout this entire movie. I have no negative.
There's a line that literally any negatives I could have about this movie are never lobbied at Michael Douglas. Never. But like he has a moment where he's like talking to the side. It's like he was always theorized that there'd be people down here. Look at all these people, and holy shit, that guy looks like a piece of broccoli.
Yeah.
I really like that.
On our walk to the car, that was like Fanny's favorite line. When we were like, holy shit, that guy looks like broccoli.
Michael Douglas has a lot of funny lines that I love.
This does feel like a Rick and Morty episode, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a negative, but this being Jeff Loveness, who wrote a bunch of Rick and Morty, he also is a comic book writer, but like Rick and Morty get transported to an alternate dimension and they meet goo people, and I'm like, I've seen this episode.
I will say most specifically in the probability scene, the Baskin Robbins Scott.
Yeah,
that felt like a Rick and Morty gag.
Yeah,
like it was funny. At first, and then like
it got in the way of the seriousness.
He shows up 2 more times, and I'm like, this feels like Rick and Morty. This feels like we're hitting the joke more times than we should.
Again, like these are things I find funny, like the don't be a dick stuff with MODOK, which we'll get to MODOK, who I love. That like all like the holes thing really felt like Rick and Morty, but again, I think that's really funny. I think Jeff Loveness
that was a great joke.
I think Jeff Loveness is a really funny writer. I'm curious about him like writing big movie scripts like this. Because if he's like Michael Waldron, who did Multiverse of Madness, is writing one of the Secret Wars, yeah, and then King Dynasty.
He's doing King Dynasty.
Loveness is writing King Dynasty.
Yeah, so like
he's got a good voice for King.
He's got a good voice. I'm wondering if it's more the director. Like I'm wondering like what if it's a writer or the director that just made me not totally love this movie. Because like I also think honestly visually, I never have this problem. I think this movie's really dark. I don't think like I know they wanted a different aesthetic from like Guardians of the Galaxy. You're doing like a different type of Star Wars thing, but like it feels like they filmed half the shit in the closet sometimes. I just don't understand it.
I feel that way often, but I didn't feel that way in this film.
Yeah, it's like there's a certain shots, like specifically, like people are talking, and it's like there's no lighting here. There's no lighting here, and it's not a big, it's not like a big deal, but it's like I really noticed it. Like it's not vibrant like I thought the movie would be.
I will say that the section of it that got to me in that regard is some of the early flashback stuff with Janet and Kang.
Yeah,
before they get closer to fixing the chair. It's very dark there, and I feel like a lot of it is to hide some of the de-aging effect on Michelle Pfeiffer. And I get it, but like it was very dark to the point where I'm like, you need some reflective lighting here. Like this is darker than it needs to be.
It's not the whole movie, but it's definitely like I can tell you this was not this. I mean, most of this is filmed on green screen volume stuff. So like lighting is what it is.
There's only a couple. This is actually one of the few times that I can remember recently of someone utilizing the volume well, because I think the opening flashback that Sparkz talks about is kind of the biggest offender for two reasons. One, which is what Ryan is talking about, which is the lighting issue, which I do think is a problem in that scene specifically. But also, this is the only time where I felt the volume, and I didn't feel that way in the other times where the volume was clearly present. And I was really impressed by that because I felt it a lot in Thor: Love and Thunder, and I feel it a lot in Mandalorian and Obi-Wan. So like it has happened before, and I thought Peyton Reed used the volume in a really interesting way for this one.
Yeah, I would say like 95% of the time it works. Like there are definitely a few shots from like it just looks like you're on a green screen, and there's only so much you can do when you're doing something like a movie like this, and like you're all muted colors on a muted background, like with not a lot of lighting. Like it's all gonna kind of blend together after a while.
Just while we're talking about the opening, did it strike anybody else as a little odd? Maybe I'm just a freak.
Super freak.
I think about editing, so it's not surprising. But like, wasn't it weird that we had the Marvel Studios intro, the flashback, then to modern day with Scott? I'm like, why didn't we do that tiny flashback, then the intro, then the modern day with Scott? That's usually what we do with these Marvel movies. And I would get it if the scene were longer, but it's only like a minute.
Oh, that's true.
That we're with Janet and Kang, and I'm like, why wasn't that the opening of the movie?
That is interesting. I didn't think about it. It is weird.
I mean, I'm a weirdo and I think about things
but
that,
it is, but it's not consistent with what they always do. It
totally felt weird. Like once we got out of the intro, I thought, oh, we're going to be in this Kang and Janet scene for a bit then. And then we weren't. And then we jumped to modern day and I'm like,
isn't it like it goes from black?
Why wasn't Kang's last line of like, what is this place? And then Marvel Studios intro into the music, the happy music with Scott's narration, the order. That felt so jarring.
Maybe... I don't think it's a good choice, but maybe it was to be jarring because it goes like from black to it's me, I'm Scott. But like that's not.
It didn't work.
I don't think that's a good choice.
If that was the intention, it didn't land.
I think it's to lighten the mood. It's to make it funny. Like I think a lot of like the jokes in this just ruin the pacing of the story.
Sure, that's
like, And I feel like they replaced a lot of the jokes to create. Or replaced a lot of the story with jokes, and it just like it breaks up moments, and like that would be one of those. Is like this, hey, da 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 da, and it's like, but you just created this like kind of dark like setup, and
so that just happened
because like when you put it, if you put it before the Marvel Studios intro, we're spending too much time on this, but if you put it before the Marvel Studios intro and Kang says that, that's really for the audience that already knows him from Loki, right? Then it's supposed to be like, oh, what's this Marvel Studios intro? You're invested, yeah? Prologue, okay, Scott Lang.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's weirded me out. I thought it was a bad cut.
Can we talk about our big face boy?
Darren Cross.
He's not a dick.
I love him.
Died an Avenger.
I love him so much, and I think this is so funny because I know Marty doesn't.
That's fair.
Really?
Here's the thing: MODOK is he's not a character that he's a big face man. That's as much as you need to know. He had a TV show that people really like. There's a lot of great miniseries, but like MODOK is a dumb villain, right? If you don't like him, that's fair. People think he's gross. Some people don't think he's gross enough. Like the opinions on MODOK are all over the place. It's really funny.
My wife didn't like looking at him.
Yeah, imagine. People want him uglier like the comics. And I'm like, is he not ugly enough? What are you talking about? He's a big face man.
Sorry, Corey Stoll.
Sorry? Listen, that dude's handsome.
I think it's inspired that it was Darren Cross as MODOK.
Me too, yeah.
Honestly. It created a really fun villain, in my opinion, for Cassie to deal with. This kind of like personal villain that traumatized her when she was younger. Yeah. And then confronting her. I really liked MODOK in this movie, and I thought he was a lot of fun. I thought he was very funny. I think he looks so uncomfortable, and as he should, in my opinion. I think MODOK should look uncomfortable.
Yeah. He's exactly who. If I had one complaint, and it's not even a big it doesn't bother me. Like I wish he survived, but we live in a multiverse where I bet Kang has a MODOK in every universe. Because why wouldn't you? Also, like MODOK isn't Corey Stoll or Darren Cross, so like there could be the real MODOK still in our world. Like all this is
Pull a Mandarin,
sure, yeah.
I really like the idea. I think it's so smart for it to have been Darren Cross because of the way he died, that like collapsing in on himself. The idea that he collapsed completely into the helmet, into the head, and with the tiny limbs. I was like,
this tiny booty.
What? This makes more sense than most explanations you could make for why MODOK looks like MODOK. So like, I'm into it. This works for me.
Yeah.
And I liked it being a personal history for Scott and Cassie and all that. Like the full circle of it lands. I think my only thing about it is that I kind of wish MODOK were more of the prominent, not necessarily antagonist, but like more prominent as an adversary to the Ant-Man family in this film, and Kang were a little bit more of a backseat outside of with Janet, so that this movie doesn't feel so absolutely like it's forcing Kang down your throat.
What if I told you, Sparkz Witty, that was the original plan?
I mean, I'm sure that's true.
MODOK was the original big bad, and Kang was kind of like the mastermind trying to get out from the Wizard of Oz. And they were like, what if we made it a big Avengers movie? And I'm like, okay. Kang's still cool. Like I'm glad I saw him.
I love MODOK's tiny booty.
God, I can't believe we saw his little butt. So what a stupid. I truly cannot believe we are 31 movies in 40 whatever it is, and we got big head MODOK. I can't believe it. And there are people online who are like, he's not perfect like the comics. I'm like, shut your mouth. Who cares?
I think we get. I'm sure I've talked about this before, and I hope I don't throw us into a rabbit hole, but I think we get a prominent butt shot in every phase, at least one. Sure. Two of them have been Thor. One in Thor and one in Thor Love and Thunder. Ragnarok has the Hulk's butt.
Sure.
This one has MODOK's butt. I'm trying to remember any more butt shots. I probably shouldn't. It's weird.
That's all you need to know.
But
Anyway.
yeah, no, I like the setup. I like him being there, all the reasons why he's there. That's great. But like, and they make him sound like he's gonna be this super scary thing.
Yeah.
The hunter. Oh no, the hunter's terrible. And then the hunter's a joke. And it's like, why are you guys afraid of this joke? He's a joke.
Yeah.
There's
That's so
nothing
interesting
funny about him. A 16-year-old girl who doesn't know how to fight can beat him.
Well,
like, there's nothing that like.
Did you? Because the point of
Oh, go ahead.
No, so I'm curious because like he is a joke. The point is he is a joke. But the point that a 16-year-old girl can kick his ass is like yeah, because he's a big face. He's dumb.
But then everybody else who's afraid of him, who has lost.
Oh, sure. Okay, sure.
They are all now jokes too.
I'll tell you what. Here's my bullshit reasoning is he wears a mask the whole time. So the quantum realm people don't know he's Darren Cross. He can probably kill regular people that aren't superheroes pretty easily with his laser beams and like attacks and whatever and buzzsaws. So Scott and Cassie know he's a joke because they know who Darren Cross is and they know he's turned into this thing. So I think everybody else doesn't know he's a joke.
But the Yellow Jacket wasn't a joke either. Like when he was the Yellow Jacket, he was frightening.
It's true.
That was some creepy ass stuff.
That's true. Yeah.
So like now all of a sudden he's just, and I get that MODOK is like, he's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's kind of like silly. I get that. But like how they set him up and then what they did with him is that he was just a gag.
Yeah.
And that's all it was.
He is more of a gag than a character. And that is, I will give like people who are mad about like, he's just a one note villain. Like I will give you credit. Like there could have been a more compelling version of MODOK in this movie. But like he's not a character I'm gonna go up to bat for like I would like a Taskmaster, to be honest. Like he's not like a Black Panther villain. He's a dude with a big head. Like you want pathos MODOK, watch the Patton Oswalt show. You know what I mean? Like mostly in the comics, he's a big asshole.
Well, but even in the Patton Oswalt show, the point is that he's also a joke in that.
Yeah, and he's trying to get taken seriously and stuff.
But I get what Marty means because it's like he's not introduced that way, and certainly not from the perspective of like. This is more a problem with me that I have with like the quantum realm people that you're referring to, because like I think they're just kind of distracting.
Yeah,
I get having them. I get having like Kang has to have someone to conquer.
Yes,
and like, but I'm like we're spending time with these characters, but we're not investing in these characters. Like I didn't mind the initial setup of them, but like the fact that we come back to them for the rebellion and give a lot of time to them, I'm like, this is time that should go to other.
We spend a lot of time.
We're just not spending it. Like the only thing I found truly valuable is like Cassie freeing the girl because I'm like this makes sense because Cassie can't just like go start all this on her own. But then that we're cutting away so often to like talented actors who I really like the actor who plays Chidi on The Good Place and stuff like that, but it's not like they have a lot to do in a lot of the scenes we're cutting to them.
Chidi might as well not even have been in the movie. Like whether he's like a famous actor or not, like that character, a lot of the quantum people, like
he has two of my favorite jokes. I will say that.
Okay, that's fair.
Because he has the 7 holes joke, which is really
okay. That's fair.
And he does have the one that I liked, which is where they read the guard. The guard's like, I'll never tell, and then he reads his mind, and he's like, it's this. And he's like, well, shit.
Okay, that's all right. All right.
Are the guards sentient? Are they like?
They're robots,
right? They're robots.
They're robots.
So how does he read a robot's mind?
That's a good question.
Robots have brains.
Do they?
Cyborgs have brains.
I mean, like a computer
do
brain.
Robots, do they? Right.
Well, here's the thing.
Or they could be people that freely enlisted with Kang. Like when King was conquering, those people, that's just their uniform. They just have a voice modulator or something.
Here's the thing: the movie doesn't clarify any of this, so all these answers are potentially true. Right. We don't see anyone under those helmets, and I could have swore at one point somebody said his robotic army, but I could be, conflating stuff.
Who knows?
Yeah. Any more positive, Brandon? I know you haven't said a lot.
Let's see. I enjoy the humor in this movie quite a bit. I know that rubbed up against Marty a little bit. Actually, for much of the same reason why the Thor: Love and Thunder humor isn't working for me these days. But I'm not sure what the difference is here outside of maybe I just find the sense of humor, Jeff Loveness' sense of humor more appealing than Taika Waititi's at this point in my life. But I think that most, if not all, the jokes landed for me. There's there's so many things with Hank that I mentioned already, but there's a few more that I thought about, but it doesn't matter. I don't need to list them. I just thought this was I wrote it down because I liked it so much. Thank goodness I looked at my notes. It's when they're talking about the buildings and the quantum people and they're like, your buildings are alive? Are your buildings dead? I just thought that was really funny.
That was very good, but
that was me.
Yeah, I like the humor.
I love that finale. I think generally third act. Like I always get worried with these big third acts, but
did you guys catch the part where one of the living buildings was holding another living building?
Oh yeah,
I was like
the third act of not just the rebels coming and all the ships, the living ships, but the army that got sent in a different tunnel that came 1,000 years before them, who has an entire civilization, and they're like the elves in the Two Towers. Love it. So ridiculous. Some people are really mad that Kang got beat up by a bunch of ants, and I'm like, y'all, that's just fun.
That's such a good moment. Fun. That's such a good moment because it's I kept thinking to myself, how are there going to be ants in this movie that we're going to the quantum realm? And then when I saw the ant farm get taken, I was like, oh, okay, that's how. But making it so cool of like, and then seeing the ants go through the time tunnel for 1,000 years and expanding their knowledge is so funny. But then like Kang doesn't give a shit about Scott. Like here's Scott Lang, Ant-Man. Who cares about Scott Lang, Ant-Man? You talk to ants. You're not going to do anything. And like, I'm not going to be beaten by a guy who talks to ants. And then these giant ants come in. It's such a triumphant and solid moment to like end this kind of like idea that Ant-Man is this worthless hero. It's kind of, back what it's like. It reminds me a lot of like back when Aquaman, like they were saying like, oh, Aquaman talks to fish and like he summons like a giant kraken and a shark. And it's like that's what he does.
The part where the ants come to beat the shit out of King, I felt like it was like a surprise mother effer moment. Like where there's, because he straight up says, oh, you just talk to ants. I've killed thousands of Avengers before. And you just talk to, what's that? And it's just a giant army of ants.
Michael Douglas swaggers in like only Michael Douglas can, and I was like, yeah, baby, that's cool.
If I may, real quick, like it's like the best. I think like it's also, this isn't a slight on you, by the way, Marty. I think a lot of where you've landed is valid. I just don't always agree, but I think it is a lot of like, if you read the comics a lot, when you get to a more comedic comic, something that would be like Ant-Man or something like that, and they bring in a heavy hitter like Kang. Usually part of the humor is the fact that like it's this person who's normally so seriously taken kind of being foiled by dumb shit and also being like, how am I being foiled by dumb shit?
Yeah.
Because like part of it is the ants overwhelming him, but it's also like that he didn't see MODOK betraying him in that moment coming and slamming into the force field and saying, my name is Darren and I'm not a dick. And Kang just being like, what is happening?
And he just literally kills him instantly. Like, yeah. I got a great quote from one of the Kang comics I was reading. And this is like the ethos of Kang and why he gets defeated all the time. This is after he won. Right. At last, I was not guilty of underestimating my foe. Too often in the past, I have let my contempt for the other beings blind me to these Avengers. Because he hates so much, and he doesn't think that Scott Lang can kick his ass. So when it does happen, it does happen.
Well, the other thing that I value about it that I disagree with, like people bouncing off of Kang being beaten in this way, is that like Kang doesn't get beaten in that way. Kang comes back and almost gets through the portal and fights Scott, physically beating the shit out of Scott. And he says, like, you can't win this, Scott. You can't physically beat me.
Yeah.
And Scott says, I don't have to beat you. We both just have to lose. And is willing to sacrifice what he has to stop Kang. And that's the only part that's important about that, is like, you're right. Toe-to-toe, Ant-Man can't beat Kang, but he can prevent him from achieving his goal.
True. Exactly.
True.
And I think that's the only part that's important about that. And so it's like, it's not about like, Ant-Man isn't stronger than Kang now. There's nothing in this movie that says that. What it does say is that Ant-Man is, under the right circumstances, able to do enough, to sacrifice enough to push Kang away from his goal.
And Kang is at such an elevated level of like being, like, you know, like multiverse, time travel, all that shit, right? Like, he does not think that a dude who talks to ants is going to be able to do anything to him. And so when it happens, like, there's nothing he can do about it, because he cannot expect 1,000-year-old technologically advanced army of ants out of nowhere. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, you know? Like,
I also like that Hope comes back for him.
Yeah, I do too.
The original ending that did not test well was that Scott and Hope got left in the quantum realm.
Yeah, which it feels
and
like
that should have been the ending. That should have been the ending.
The random portal that just shows up. Like,
but here's the thing.
Here's
Here's why I do like it. Because Cassie's line when she's initially talking about it, if I had this, I could have saved you from the quantum realm earlier. So she built that literally to save her dad.
In 2 seconds.
So it is a full circle thing. I still think it would have been a more satisfying ending if Scott's sacrifice was like meant something.
What do you mean, Mag? Sorry, Mag's comment. Still wonder what Jimmy Woo was doing with Scott in the beginning. He was going to a restaurant and eating with him. Don't you remember the joke in Ant-Man and the Wasp?
He was having dinner.
Go have dinner?
Yeah.
Where would we even go?
Magic.
Okay, so since we brought that up, it seems a little silly to me. I get the Baskin-Robbins joke guy. But the fact that we brought him back twice, we do a second gag with him at the end of the movie.
And not the homies?
We can't have Michael Pena in this movie?
The homies?
Yeah.
What?
The homies.
What? Shut up.
Not even...
Or Judy Greer at the birthday?
Not even a reference.
Yeah.
Not even a line about like, oh, I wish our friends were here. Nothing. That's just like, I don't blame that on Jeff Loveness. I do blame Peyton Reed, the guy who's made these other two movies. Like, why don't you include the homies? I don't get it.
I agree with Sparkz in the sense of the birthday scene, because you know, there's no room for them in this movie. Like, realistically, you could have probably replaced Randall Park with Michael Pena in the montage in the beginning, but that's really the only place that they can be.
Just imply that like Scott helped them make that business successful. I like one shot is enough to at least like keep them in mind.
Yeah. So when we get to the birthday at the end, I was really confused why at least Judy Greer wasn't there, because and like I get like the joke that it's not her actual birthday, but like still like that feels like that's where you put those characters, because again it's not like you're bringing them to the quantum realm. That's not this movie. Like, but you can have them at the end there for a cameo at least.
Yeah, it just for me that feels like something where like there is an amount of like these decisions, some of the things that I'm rubbing up against that we're talking about, and things like not having Michael Pena's character reference in this film and everything, where I'm like, I feel like this Ant-Man film wasn't made for the people who were fans of the first two.
No, 100%. No, because here's the thing, like, as much as we like the Ant-Man movies, those movies don't make $1 jillion. Like, for regular people, they just don't. But like Kang, they just underestimate Scott. Like, because he's not an Avenger, he's not even, his movie is not even worth watching. And that's an unfortunate, like, a reality of how people feel about like certain movies and characters. They don't give characters chances.
Which is still just silly when you consider it's Paul Rudd.
I know. I know.
That's weird to me. Like I agree. Like, I think this movie for the most part is built for people who didn't go see the two Ant-Man films. I felt that way when I was looking at the marketing. Like, there's a sense that like they're trying to be like, this is the Ant-Man movie. You haven't seen the first two. This is the one. Go see this one, please.
Yeah.
And like, I get it, I really like the first 2 Ant-Man movies, so I kind of wish this adhered more to what I liked about them. But there's also like people don't like those Ant-Man movies. People don't like this Ant-Man movie.
Yeah. So nobody wins.
But that's all the more thing where like I feel like character arcs or decisions, like yes, there are these joke references like we referenced with Jimmy Woo, like we referenced with the Baskin Robbins thing that are there, and like certainly they are acknowledging the history of these movies existing, but I don't feel like it's carrying over a lot of the core of how these characters interacted with each other. Not a lot. It is there, but it's not as much as I want it to be for a third Ant-Man movie.
Like him calling his daughter Peanut, like in the middle of a big battle.
That finally felt good. Yeah. It took a long time to get there.
Yeah, and like that is a thing that like I think only people who've watched the other Ant-Man movies would appreciate.
Right.
So like, you know, those moments are there, but like this definitely felt like not like a soft reboot of any sense, but like you don't really have to worry about those other movies if you
go home and watch Legends on Disney Plus, watch Endgame, and then you're good.
Yeah.
But that said, a lot. I was really concerned going into this movie that everything I love about the first 2 Ant-Man films won't be present in there. I have to admit that I did feel enough of that kind of emotionality between Scott and Cassie to carry this movie for me. That to me was there, and that is part of the heart of the Ant-Man films that I do appreciate. And I was glad that at least carried over, and that was for me. Honestly enough at this point in my life anyway. Who knows what I'll feel like next month.
That's true. I think for me it's not even that I don't think it's there, it's that it feels like there should have been more, like there was a better version of telling the story. Again, I think a key part of it is where is Hope. That Hope is just in like the opposite part of the story from what she should be. And I think that would have done a lot to make me feel more like we're doing the right beats. And it would have altered Scott and Cassie, but I think in a good way. And it's more me like not saying, oh, I didn't enjoy this movie. I really did enjoy this movie. I had a great time. It's ranked in the high middle of all my MCUs. Like I do enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
I think that I see like wasted potential in it for the opportunities that were present. We haven't said a lot about it, but I do want to spotlight that I think Michelle Pfeiffer is excellent in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I so wanted the truth to be that her and King had a kid, and that's who Iron Lad is. And that's the big secret that she didn't want to tell anybody.
It could still come.
It could still come, but I highly doubt it. Yeah, she is great. And like, again, the stuff with her and Hope, I wish was like better because it's just her like nagging about why won't her mom tell her things. While her and her husband are having a great time. Love them together. Couldn't be happier.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, because you guys mentioned it before while I was having my coughing fit. I do really like the imagination in this movie. I think this movie is really imaginative. I really appreciate how not even like, I wouldn't even go so far as to say the quantum realm was well thought out. I just really kind of like the imagination on display, that there are so many cool and interesting monsters and some cool and interesting, I like the ship designs of the quantum realm. I think the realm itself looks really interesting and visual. I was really, for me personally, I actually really like the vibrancy and the colors. There's so many like bright blues, even like dark blues, but like there's so many interesting kind of like warm coloring in the quantum realm that you don't often get with the Ant-Man films or the MCU in general. And I appreciated that. And once again, I really like the imagination of all the characters. Now that said, that also brought me to a negative, which I don't like Ant-Man's suit. I don't like Ant-Man and the Wasp's new suit. I think it's too busy.
Oh, I like Wasp's new suit.
I like Wasp. I like the color of Wasp's suit. I'm glad it's more like bright yellow, but there's too many busy black lines going around in both of their suits for me.
I will only push back on Hope's because I agree with you about Ant-Man's. I think Ant-Man's did look busier this time than it needed to. The reason Hope's works for me is because it looks like a wasp. Like having the many black lines lands for me, so that didn't actually bother me.
Sure.
I get it, but like for me it worked.
Yeah. But yeah, that's just the end of my point. Like that's also the end of my notes. I really like the imagination of the movie.
I mean, actually, it looks less like a wasp and more like a yellow jacket, but that's neither here nor there.
Darren,
Yellow Jacket's
I
dead.
also agree. Yeah, he died on Avenger.
He died in Avenger. I always considered you a brother, Scott.
That is so funny. Oh my god.
I know you hate it, Marty. I think it's really funny.
I get the joke. It's funny. Like it's a funny joke.
Just not for you. Humor is different for everyone.
No, like I laughed. It was great. It was just one of those things where like I didn't want him to be as like much of a joke as they made him out.
That's fair.
I will say I wish that they'd done a little bit more with like the moment they only kind of like give you a brief glimpse of where Kang like shoves him up against the wall and says, "Don't talk in my presence."
Yeah, his Starscream
like,
moment
looks at him as less than everything else, and like I wish that was baked in a tiny bit more to kind of assign like the way Darren views himself is informed by the way that Kang treats him.
Yeah.
Right, but like the whole "don't be a dick" thing, like he is a dick, and he should always be a dick. That's just what he is, and I don't know. The whole think him trying to redeem himself, like he didn't need to be redeemed because he's just is a terrible person.
This
and they don't think he's not a terrible person. Him doing that right thing once, they're like, well, you're still kind of awful.
Yeah, but he's dying.
I do think
they're even looking at him like you're still kind of awful.
Devil's advocate to your point. I do think that like again, a little bit more of that Kang relationship would have informed like what has Darren become? Like, look at everything he lost turning into this version of himself in the quantum realm. And now he's treated as less than human by Kang all the time. And he's done that for 20 years or like whatever amount of time. Sorry, not 20 years, but like whatever amount of time it has been in the quantum realm that he's been here. Sure. Right. And if that had been more there, I think it earns more the sense of like Darren being able to be like, what I think works is Cassie, when she slams Darren into the ground, he's like, "Come on back, what are you doing?" And she's like, "Dude, we're like, what are you doing?" That part works for me. Maybe not, like, I get what you're saying about like the redemption and everything, and I do think like more of the Kang relationship stuff would have helped that, but her coming back at him like, "Dude, like, what even is this? Like, what's the end? What's the goal here, man? What do you get out of this now?"
It's like
and he's just like, I don't know how to be anything else.
This is all I know how to be.
This is kind of fair if you take it in the message of like, this is what Kang can turn people into.
Sure.
It does make Kang like more intimidating and sinister and dark and cruel in his own way. I wish they leaned on that harder.
Yeah.
But like, I think if you are allowing yourself to pontificate on that idea, that really works for me.
Right.
This idea of like what he was reduced to in the eyes of Kang.
Yeah.
Also, like the final line after he dies is like, and Scott's like, "Man, what a day!" Just like this guy just dies in front of him, an Avenger, his old nemesis, now a big head man.
Like Darren, not even thinking of himself as Darren anymore. I do like it's fun. It's funny, but it's also like it's sad because it's like, you know, Scott trying to reach him on the radio, and he's like, "MODOK," and he's like, "Yeah, what's up?" And like,
"Yeah, what's up?"
He's so consumed by what Kang has turned him into.
He's got to live that life.
His identity is. This is what he's become. He is only important in the context of what he does.
Because what else is he gonna do? He'll just die if he fights Kang. Like he's a little jester man, big fat jester man.
I agree with you about like, you know, little too much on the jokey when like compared to the intimidation he's supposed to mean to the people who live there.
Yeah.
Brian,
I wanted to
go ahead.
Talk about what you were saying about the world.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to that because I thought that was the world and just how it's kind of like on a cellular level and everything is like living and like even like putting your arms in the ship.
Oh, I love the goo arms.
Even like eating the food, all the food is still living and alive. And it's just like you're eating that weird octopus calamari thing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like everything about it. It's like the only reason why you can like beat these things is because you're bigger than these things.
Yeah.
And I just thought that like everything is alive.
It's really cool. It's a good moment to remember the like, that's not a sun, and then like toss the sun and it gets absorbed by another thing that comes after them.
You know what movie this reminds me of?
Fish.
Boy Howdy, Disney's Strange World, about a group of 3 generations of explorers going to an unknown world where things are alive inside of it. Crazy. People didn't like that movie either, and they're also wrong.
I really I really liked in the beginning how Cassie calls Hank grandpa. I think you guys mentioned that while I was gone. But the line that I also really like is when he makes the pizza big and he's just saved $8. And Scott's like, "I admire you."
Yeah, there's really good character comedy between them for sure.
Yeah.
I just think Michael Douglas is. I really like him in the Ant-Man movies anyway. I think he's really great in them. Surprisingly so. He could just sleepwalk through these movies. But like he doesn't. He like turns in some really fun and kind of like freeing performances. He's not doing a lot, but what he's doing is really fun and really good.
Yeah. Do you guys think this is the last Ant-Man movie?
No.
I hope not.
It's had the highest opening out of all the Ant-Man movies, but it's also more expensive than the other Ant-Man movies. So
I don't think it's the last one. I think they'll keep like. I think that they like Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. I think they do want to keep doing that.
I'm just saying, can you imagine an Ant-Man 4 where it's Ant-Man in stature and they do the world height work and it's just him fighting like a bug kaiju monster? Like it's still small enough scale but big and fun. Come on,
I'm for that.
Yeah, I wish that's what would happen.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the post-credit scene.
I actually want to touch on the ending. I do really like Scott's internal narration when he comes back and he's like, I mean, we beat him.
Right?
Yeah. Like, we got him. Did we not get him? Did I screw up? I'm not going to worry about it. It's fine. Nothing bad's going to happen.
It is going to be funny watching this movie in like 20 years, like just watching it on its own. Like, oh yeah, I guess I got to watch whatever this is leading into or whatever. Because like the bad guy that we just beat shows up in the next thing you'll watch or whatever. Like, yeah, okay.
So post credits.
Oh my gosh, let's talk about the Council of Kings.
Did anyone want to say anything about Bill Murray?
He's in the movie.
He's in the movie.
I liked it. I thought it was great.
He's funny.
He's her ex-lover. They fought in Revolutions. Like, yeah, he's a fun addition. I will never think about it ever again.
He's so good at being a terrible person.
Yeah.
Like,
I kind of wish they would have bridged like between him and the MODOK stuff, like how Kang treats people. I feel like there was room to, not that you need to be more of the movie necessarily, but like just fill in some gaps there in the scene, because he kind of does. He like walks up to the line of like, you know what you left us with kind of thing, but like he's still serving.
I think you definitely get the vibes,
right?
Yeah, like it would have been. I see what you're saying, but I think we got enough like just how he acts and how like I'm the Lord.
I want more than the vibes.
Sure,
I want more.
You want substance?
I want substance.
Yeah.
I don't think he deserved to get eaten by that calamari though.
Sorry, last thing before post credits is I also just really like Scott coming in gigantic as heck and MODOK being like, that's big. And him coming right at it and Kang being like, oh my God, take him down.
I thought when they're both big moment was funny. Like, you're big too. Like, that's stupid shit, but I thought it was funny.
I wish they were still getting shot at.
Oh, sure.
Like everything just stopped. It was done. And they had their moment, but I wish that like you would see like little pew pews going at them.
That would have been good. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Sure. Yeah. Post credit time.
So post credit scene introduces many Jonathan Majors as Kang's variants. We get Immortus and Ramatut in the beginning.
And then some other guy.
So all the Kang spurts online are speculating. It's not Red Centurion because we see him in the gladiatory arena. You see a big red dude. People are speculating that that's Kid Immortus, who is an evil version of Iron Lad. It could just be a random Kang, but like it is weird that you have like the ones from the comics. You have Ramatut, you have Immortus, and then you just have a rando. So he's probably someone they give him a really weird design. So we don't know. I read a lot of Kang comics. So you guys go first. So I feel like I know what's happening. Like I feel like I know like the trajectory of shit that's gonna go on. I want to hear you guys talk about it first. So
when Kang gets sucked into his to the engine, I thought, okay, so he's probably just getting time warped. He's not dying. But then when in the post-credit scene, when they say, "So he's dead," it's like they didn't kill. It's like these other people killed him, and you must be bummed he didn't get. I was like, okay, so he is dead. We are gonna get a different Kang as like the true.
Is he dead?
Well, these Kangs certainly think so.
These Kangs think so. So I'm going off the word of these Kangs.
We have another post-credit scene to talk about as well.
But that's a different Kang.
I'm not convinced yet.
Yeah.
No, because going from the comics, Kang gets defeated by the Avengers, gets sent back in time to 1901, finds Timely, Wisconsin, creates the TVA, all that shit. So unless this is a different Kang, I don't think. Here's my big brain theory. I don't think they're introducing Kang the Conqueror, the one that we just saw in this movie, to be our big bad. he is the king that will become a good person. He will be the king that helps the Avengers because he will become Victor Timely. He will help them stop Immortus and all them. I read like 30 issues of the King, so this is all in my brain. This is all a bunch of nonsense.
Do you think he's the King who creates the TVA in Loki?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes. Because Loki specifically is like, he's like, that's the meanest guy.
That would track a lot of trajectory if like you look at this like in hindsight as the origin story for the Kang who runs the TVA that we're going to see in Loki season 2. I could buy that.
And it's not Loki and not the Loki or not the King at the end.
No, it would be like what they're.
That's the same.
They're all because where Loki and Owen Wilson are we're going to the other post credit scene, but where they are in the other post credit scene, they've gone back in time to like he lives in the TVA the King that King created, and he's taking Owen Wilson back in time
to show him
the origin of that guy, but he. In Ryan's theory, could potentially have spilled out to that moment in time from this movie.
That's just speculation.
So, like when he gets sucked into the world engine, spills out to the Victor Timely period where he becomes that person.
Okay.
So, like that, we're kind of getting a kind of through line through the midst of all the Kang chaos.
And this Victor Timely could absolutely just be another Kang, but I think they have a really good trajectory and they have a really cool thing where they can have a good Kang on their Avengers team. And I think the more Jonathan Majors, the better.
So my only counter to that, because like I don't know, nobody knows what's going to happen in the next in Loki season 2 or wherever Kang goes. My only thing about that is Timely doesn't have the scars.
Yeah.
And that's this true. Kang does when he dies.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah. I truly cannot believe that we didn't just get we got Immortus and we got Romano, but we got like 1,000 Kangs. We got like the what's the last Star Wars movie called? Like Rise of Skywalker. We got like that Sith temple, but it's all Kangs. Like again, that is just right from the comics, and that is truly bananas.
More Jonathan Majors, more better.
Yeah. Immortus is I don't know what they're gonna do for the Kang Dynasty, but in the comics, Immortus is the big bad King. He is the king at the end of the world. And he was using King the Conqueror to destroy other timelines for his own purposes. So Immortus would always become Immortus. So like, there's so much bullshit that they're probably gonna do that. Like, you know, it's all fun speculation. I don't know. Who knew? Loki season 2 could just wipe all this out of the water.
They could do really anything with Kang. I mean, they could theoretically make it so that Jonathan Majors always plays a different version of Kang every single appearance until Kang Dynasty, which could just be him playing 5 different versions of Kang.
Yeah. I mean, it's man, that post-credit scene is so crazy, y'all. I just can't believe because they didn't just show all the same versions of Kang. Like they showed Mr. Griffin, who is the Kang from the 2018 run who bought Avengers Tower. And if you watch Loki, it's the Avengers Tower in that realm has Kang Tower on it. So like this is all this Kang stuff is happening and like it's all setting up and like it could have been Wilson Fisk, could have been Baxter Building, but like it could have been Kang, could have been Mr. Griffin Kang who bought that tower. Like all this is in the air. Like it's almost impossible to speculate because they've done the comics and the comics are batshit crazy. It was really wild being in that theater, hearing him talk like this. And I'm like, what are you doing with your accent? And then he's a pharaoh man. And then he's like an alien man.
I'm so glad we saw Roman time.
Yeah. Like the thing that baffles me, I'm just going to talk about some Kang lore real quick because we're here and I'm just thinking about it. Like Rama-Tut was introduced, but he wasn't Kang originally. He was retconned. Immortus was introduced as an Avengers villain and he wasn't Kang until he was retconned like a decade later. Like all of these villains became Kang years later because they were not cool enough to be on their own. And the fact that they're introducing them all at once is so wild and fascinating because like they could have done a Fantastic Four is Rama-Tut's first appearance. They could have made a Fantastic Four movie where this guy was the villain. But that's the thing. Like this could be it's so crazy. This is probably like the wildest post-credit scene we've ever had. Just because like the limitations are limitless. They could do anything. I don't even know what to think.
I really like the line that he says, that Immortus says when he's like, they're beginning to touch us. Like they're like the MCU is starting to rub up against whatever the Kang Council is planning. Like they're like the more powerful the MCU kind of gets, the closer they get. And like Immortus and the other Kangs are now looking to the point that okay, this is now a threat. We need to deal with this.
Yes. So So another reason I think King might become a good guy is because his whole motivation, much like a Thanos, like Thanos wants to kill half the universe, but for good reasons. He wants to save the universe because it's overpopulated, right? Kang thing is like, yo, the other versions of me are awful, and they're just wrecking shit, and incursions are happening nonstop. They don't realize they're destroying the multiverse, so I have to stop them by destroying other universes. And I'm like, well, like you're killing people by killing people. Like none of it's right. But like he is doing the right thing. He's doing what the Avengers do in Hickman's Avengers by destroying alternate universes to save Earth. So he is doing the right thing technically. And it's going to be a really fun thing if we get to, right before Secret Wars and the Avengers have to destroy universes. And King was like, yeah, welcome back to me 20 years ago, baby. This is what I've been trying to do since the beginning. That's fascinating shit. If they do that, then it could possibly rival Endgame. But I don't believe it. Because
I'm curious to see what they end up doing for Secret Wars. There's a rumor that this Kang could become the Beyonder. Like not a rumor, like speculation that this Kang would be like their, because they did Secret Wars would probably be a version of Battle World, and you can mix and match characters to make this character be the Beyonder. There's really no reason why not.
Sure, the Beyonder is a very old character that is his own character that comes from his own race of Beyonders, which is like I think that's they could do it, but I just find that lazy. If you're just we're just gonna make this entire other decades-long villain also Kangs, I think that would ruin a lot of the fun of the original Secret Wars, which is about the Beyonder himself. But like rumors come true these days, so like if that's true, like I wouldn't be surprised.
Sorry, it's not rumor. I misspoke. It's speculation.
Okay.
Or I mean, like, not necessarily make him the Beyonder, but put him in the Beyonder role.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. Don't turn him into a Beyonder. Just like I don't
adapt a Kang into playing the role.
I'd rather you again just do the comics, but like I understand you got to do your MCU thing. That's fair. Ben, you have any opinions on 5,000 Kangs?
Well, real quickly, I just want to say, I'm curious. I've always been curious about Secret Wars because, they either could do. They have three options in my opinion. They could just introduce the Beyonder. They could do Kang, put Kang in the role of the Beyonder, or they could just be like, yeah, Dr. Doom is now this villain because he will most likely be introduced in the Fantastic Four movie that would be I think a year or two removed from Secret Wars. So they've got three options, and I've always been curious about it. But Kang Dynasty is the one where I'm like we're gonna see some weird shit.
Yeah, my and my fun speculation on this, but they're definitely going to introduce Dr. Doom to be part of Secret Wars. Like that is inevitability. I do think that, like Hickman's Avengers, Dr. Doom is the one who becomes the hero of the universe. So like, Kang can be the bad guy, and then Dr. Doom takes his omnipotent power, and then that's how Secret Wars happens. So like, it could still be Kang as our primary villain, and then oops, it's actually Dr. Doom. This whole thing is Dr. Doom's orchestration. Like that could all still happen. Which is fine. Their connections in the comics have only become more and more connected over the decades. So like, that's fine.
I just really hope that the road forward to Kang Dynasty and beyond is littered with Jonathan Majors. I don't want them to blow their whole Majors load on Kang Dynasty. I want it to actually.
We need more than one.
And stretched out for a long period of time.
Oh, we need more than one major load. I agree.
Ben, final thoughts, and why don't you rate it?
On the whole film. So like I said earlier, I like the whole film, and to touch on the 1,000 Kangs, and even the final post credits scene with Loki and Mobius, sorry, wrong Marvel character,
Michael Morbius.
I liked it. The Council of Kings was absolutely terrifying. Like Mag is in the comments, he said the audience as Jonathan Majors as Kings is funny and scary. I agree. Grayson also said that he don't think it's the same thing, that King was alive, but then the other King said he was dead. So I know this is not the end of Jonathan Majors' run as King, obviously. King will return, obviously. No, Grayson, I'm not going to. Final thoughts, it's enjoyable, but I like the other Ant-Man films more. One of the strengths of the Ant-Man films is the ensemble. And as much as I did enjoy the smaller ensemble in this movie,
that's the Council of Kangs.
That's a lot of Kang.
The Avengers from the 80s, baby.
That's a lot of Kang.
That's a lot of Kang.
As I was saying, even though this film has a smaller ensemble or a different ensemble, if you will, to me they just don't bring a candle to what the original ensemble is. And that's including Judy Greer, that's including Michael Pena, and the rest of the squad of Scott's friends. But all in all, Cassie was still fun. I still enjoyed Cassie quite a bit, and this movie does set up something for later on down the MCU. But if you were to ask me which of the 3 Ant-Man films I would like to watch more, probably the first one. Probably the original one. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I flip flop between the first and second one, but besides that, the final rating, I give it a 7. It's still a fun movie. It's still a fun date night. It just doesn't go, oh my God, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll agree with that. You know, Ant-Man and the Wasp is in my top 5. So I was ready to love it. And it's mostly pretty good. I'll give it a 7.5. I think Kang is awesome. There's a part of me that just wishes this could have still been a Quantum movie, but maybe have MODOK be the bad guy, and you know, have the personal stakes kind of be the main core of it. But Kang is awesome, and seeing 5,000 Kangs truly blew my mind. That is probably my favorite post-credit scene that we've had, just because the bringing comic books to life has never been more insane than that moment. Seeing 5,000 Jonathan Majors in a Coliseum. Thank you. 7.5.
Sparkz?
Excuse me, sorry. I had a big yawn inside of me.
Big yawn.
I think that part of it for me comes from this place of wanting this to be the Ant-Man movie that got everybody to be like, oh, great, Ant-Man movies are really good, actually.
Yes.
And feeling like the potential to have pulled that off was there, and it didn't quite hit the home run I think it should have, because I do feel like there's an amount, in a way I haven't felt for a while in the MCU, of like really forcing up we're setting up the future kind of storytelling rather than we're focusing just right here on the story here. And while I like to see Kang and Jonathan Majors and everything, I'm not saying I necessarily want them out of this movie. I just wanted a bit more of the Ant-Man heart and character growth, not just for him, but for his characters around him that I used to from the Ant-Man films. But I still really enjoyed it. I had a great time overall. I think the performances are really strong. There's just, again, like that hope problem is, I think, really key and at the center of why some of the stuff is missing and lacking. But I had a lot of fun. I still would put it up pretty high. It's an 8 for me, so make of that what you will.
Hell yeah.
Marty?
I thought it was a lot of fun. I know that I have a lot of negatives and stuff like that. Like, the humor is funny. It's a funny show. When watching the trailer, when I watched the trailer, I was like, oh crap. Like, this is gonna be intense. And like, this Kang's gonna be intense, everything's gonna be super intense. And then when watching the movie, it's like,
holes.
Okay, this is funny. That's funny. All right, there's some humor there, and it's good humor, but it's just so much of it that like frightening storyline that exists just wasn't demonstrated. And it was kind of like, all right, so cool, yeah, I like this, but like, I just wish there was a little bit more to it. So 7.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'll feel differently later. I have a tendency to turn on a lot of MCU projects that I'm pretty hot on lately, except for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I stuck with that one. But as it stands, I had a really good time. I really liked it. I said in the beginning I loved it. I think I did love it. Like, you know, maybe I'm trying to convince myself I did. That's certainly a possibility. I've done that before, but like right now, I just really liked this movie. So I give it an 8.5.
Yeah, I don't think that there's like a wide gap between you and the rest of us. I think it's like, you know, a smidge more of it worked for you than worked for us.
Yeah.
Well, okay, there might be a bit of a bigger gap between you and Marty, but then the rest of us, like the usual fake nerds, I think we're pretty close to each other. Just, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think there's a lot to enjoy about this movie.
This movie has, again, Rotten Tomato scores like don't mean anything, but this has a like in the 40s. Ben's asleep. It's this movie's not a 40. bad.
No.
I just look at the reaction to this movie and like frankly like I'm baffled by a lot of it. I kind of get some of it. Like it's a weird movie, but like I don't know. It worked for me.
It's popular to be down on the MCU right now.
It's popular to be down on the MCU. No, a lot of people just don't care about the Ant-Man movies. And this movie, by definition, not being great, that just gives a lot of people like, oh, then they will shit all over it for no reason. Like it is unwarranted. This is probably the most unwarranted hate an MCU movie has gotten in a long time, to be honest.
There was someone like it's gotten pretty popular. A lot of people are using it as an example. I'm not going to name anyone because I don't remember the usernames. But on Twitter, like somebody gave like a very favorable, like a lot of description about what was really wonderful to them about the film, and rated a 7.5 out of 10 at the end.
Yes,
and people were like jumping on that, like, how can you say like all these things are great and then rated a C? And I'm like, what do you guys want? Like
it's
like,
only a 10 or a 0.
They're enjoying the movie so much, and they're saying that plainly, and then they give it a 7.5. If they gave it a 9, you would jump down their throat and saying they're just saying bullshit. Like they're at least being like critical and also acknowledging that they loved a lot of the movie. I don't like 7.5 is not a bad rating.
It's not.
You need to calm down.
There, but also, again, like nuance doesn't exist on the internet.
Also, like it's ridiculous that 7 is considered a C. Like I understand that's our rate. That's the rating system for kids in schools, but it's ridiculous that there's 60% that's just failing. Like that right. a 60% is not a bad movie. So why is that? Why do we attribute 60% F to 60% bad movie? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Transfer the same thing down to like a 5-star rating. That the 7.5 would be like a 3.5.
Yeah,
like that's a 7. Like that doesn't sound like a bad movie to me. A 3.5 out of 5. That's not terrible.
I've said it enough, but like some people just can't accept that movies can be okay to good. Like everything has to be a masterpiece, or it is the worst thing ever made. Like people. Like they won't accept anything greater than a masterpiece. Otherwise, like it's just not worth watching. And I think that's just a shitty way of looking at entertainment, because then you're going to miss a lot of things. Sometimes you need to see some stuff to know how not to make things.
Especially looking at MCU movies, like you can't go to these movies expecting them to be something that they're just not setting out to be to begin with.
At this point, I feel like you should you should know what you're getting into. Honestly,
yeah, it's your own fault at this point.
Right, it should be a known Quantumania. Anyway. I thought it was a great time overall.
Yeah.
I have problems, but it's mostly just like I feel like there was more potential on the table than it achieved.
I agree.
Yeah.
Change the school ranking system. Let's go into our book club.